Thank you, John, and what a fabulous video. Well done, Ryan. Fantastic. Sisters and brothers, I'm delighted to be back here in Scotland, although it is now official. I have become a southern softie because it's freezing out there. It's good, of course, that we're also joined by our chair and president of the union, Tony Woodhouse, and how wonderful that there are so many AGSs here. Steve Turner, Howard Beckett, Sharon Graham. I don't know, maybe they've come here for the racing, but it's good to have them here. You know, colleagues, Pat Rafferty always skits me because I say I have Scottish blood flowing through my veins. And when I'm in Ireland, I say Irish blood flows through my veins. But it's true. This arm is Irish blood and this arm is Scottish blood, or to put it more simply, Gaelic blood flows through my veins. McCluskey, you see, is a Gaelic name, and I permit myself to wander around the history and legends of these lands whenever I visit. But I want to first of all thank Pat and his team here in Scotland for the work that they do. To thank John Gillespie, our Scottish Executive Chair, and Agnes Tomey, the Vice Chair, but most importantly, I want to thank you for everything you do, day in, day out. You are the face of Unite as far as our members are concerned. Without you, our union simply wouldn't exist. You know, these are difficult times. I was only reflecting when I was writing this speech. How many times have I said that since I became General Secretary? Over 9 years ago, when I took over, we had to face the global financial crisis, which became obvious very quickly that working people would be the ones to pay the price, including our members in the finance sector, not the greedy bankers, the spivs and the speculators who caused it, but our members. Then came, hard on its heels, austerity, courtesy of the Tories and their Liberal Democrat mates. Constant, difficult times that have seen us lose so many jobs and so many workplaces. A wise man once said to me that the Conservatives and capitalism never let a good crisis go to waste. Austerity was always their political choice. They looked at the banking crash and saw an opportunity. For them, it wasn't an opportunity to remake our economy as a fairer, more stable entity. No, for them, this was a chance to make a land grab on our assets. Our public services were assaulted. Our household incomes shrunk. Household debt is now an incredible £1.8 trillion. Unbelievable. They crashed the car, but left us with the bill. Nobody went to jail. No regulations were changed. Our banks are still inadequately regulated. They may not be selling slithers of debt and racks of bad mortgages at the city casino, but they are still far from what they ought to be doing and what their purpose is, which is investing in our industries and our communities. When institutions lose their way, cynicism sets in. Faith in politicians is at an all-time low. From Carillion to Jamie Oliver, big business has failed working people. More than ever, people need someone to rely on. And that's where we come in. Because despite all of this, and because of you, we are still here. We are still the largest union in Scotland, still the largest union in Great Britain and Ireland, still the strongest and most influential in our nations, still the union our enemies fear the most, still the ones that the media seek to attack and undermine. I wear those attacks as a badge of honour, because despite the difficult times, we stand proud, one of the great characteristics of Scottish people, and we're afraid of nobody. We do not shirk when there is a fight to be had. One of those was the battle for fair wages at Diageo, a massively wealthy global corporation that could easily afford to pay those who have sweated to generate that wealth. Of course, Diageo has history in this part of the world. It's nearly a decade now or so since we were involved in a fight as a union, fighting tooth and nail to defend the Johnny Walker site down the road in Kilmarnock. I remember marching the streets there. We lost that battle. 192 years of history and service to this country was ended in 2012. Skills and pride ebbed away. The site is now a college. But Diageo also lost something else with its actions. It lost the people's trust. Our members knew what they were up against when they readied themselves for the 10-day strike last month. Parts of the media were also onto them. One journalist wrote that Diageo had shamelessly turned itself into the world's richest drinks company through a combination of the honeyed vision of Scotland it sold to the world, the snowy glens and the twinkly waters, but it never mentioned once the massive part played by the hard graft of the workforce. The immense wealth of the CEO Mendes and the board were secured by the toil of Scotland's forgotten communities, wrote Kevin McKenna. We never forgave the vandals' destruction of Kilmarnock, nor did we forget that our members were owed. So this time around, when we came calling for workplace justice, we won the battle. Our collective strength won the day, and Unite Scotland can be thoroughly proud, Pat, of each and every one of those members who stood up to be counted. You know, colleagues, and it said it in the video, we may not always win, but by God, the bosses and the establishment know they've been in a fight when we do fight. Like at the Cayley site in Springburn. We led the community fight to keep 150 years of rail engineering alive, and would have had that site working today had the Scottish Government had the decency to act for the people and invest in the future for Scotland's railworks. I want to pay tribute to our members for their titanic efforts to save this site and to keep this workforce together. This hall sends its respect back to our members and that community with the message that their union is determined that the fight for jobs on that site goes on. We are here to remind governments of their duty and to call them out when they fail miserably, whether that's the SNP here in Holyrood, the Tories in Westminster, or previous New Labour administrations. The casualty of failing UK corporate culture is always at the heart of problems when workers' lives are destroyed. Shamefully, too often, it is our own government that is handmaiden to this abuse. The Tory government let at least 9,000 airline jobs go to the wall because it didn't want to set a precedent by intervening to keep Thomas Cook flying. The governments of Spain, Germany, Bulgaria and Norway had no such qualms. Their airline staff are at work today as a result. But time and time again, the Conservative Westminster government places its ideology on the altar, with workers' jobs the sacrifice to its neoliberal gods. It can be exhausting, colleagues, I know, the constant battles in which we are joined, be they against threats of closure or to hang on to the advances that we've made as a class. But we are the first line of defence and the last line of defence, and I have confidence in our fortitude. Conference, let me turn to a subject close to your heart. Brexit. I know. All of us desperately hoped that by the time this conference came around, we would be done with it. But no. As I said earlier, the Tories never miss a chance to exploit a crisis. They see this as their opportunity to reshape our nation as the North Sea, low tax, no rights sweatshop. And they will grab it with both hands. That's why Johnson does not want us peering too closely at his withdrawal agreement bill. 125 pages and a further 150 pages of explanatory notes, but not one word on the economic impact of a deal widely agreed and accepted as worse than Theresa May's. Like a dodgy used car salesman, Johnson didn't want us checking over the goods. He ignored our calls for clarity on the price. He tried to bounce his deal through Parliament in 72 hours. The arrangement to end a 40-year-plus relationship with our biggest trading partner would be given less consideration than the Act of Parliament that set out the regulations for handling salmon. And I don't mean Alex salmon here. And neither Holyrood nor the Welsh Assembly will be granted the time to assess proposals which will impact on the prosperity of their communities and the reach of their devolved powers. The Prime Minister obviously has something to hide. Well, Mr. Johnson, we looked under the bonnet of your dodgy deal and saw that not only is the spare tyre flat, but half the engine has gone. The trading arrangements underpinning the jobs of our members will be scrapped. The customs provisions will need that we need to support just-in-time trade from aerospace to food processing have been ripped out. Boris Johnson is prepared to risk hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs, jobs of our communities, to appease a handful of right-wingers. Johnson has dug his ditch, all right, but it will be our members' jobs that die in it. As for Jo Swinson, well, her pitch to the Remainers, 48%, sees her turn her back on the rest of the electorate. But no surprise there. She voted for every single Tory cut, from the bedroom tax to the rape clause, which humiliates vulnerable assaulted women. She may be the media's darling, but she is no friend to women, and certainly no sister of ours. She apparently doesn't like Corbyn or Labour. Well, really, I've got news for her. The feeling's mutual, and we won't forget her role or that of the shallow Liberal Democrats. It's only Labour who are attempting to bring the country together, not irresponsibly doubling down on division. Only Labour is saying that it will negotiate a deal, one that will protect jobs, protect rights and environmental standards, one that won't be used to give our NHS as a base for Donald Trump and the salivating US private health industries. Only Labour will avert a disastrous no-deal crash-out. Labour is the grown-up in the room, the only party seeking to heal our nation. In these times of immense challenge, I would therefore urge Nicola Sturgeon and her SNP to now stand shoulder to shoulder with the working people of Scotland and across these isles. Work with Labour to see off Johnson. Block a disastrous no-deal Brexit. With this done, we can get these Tories out of office so that they can no more harm our communities. Use your talents, Nicola, and authority to put people first. Make certain that independence doesn't cloud the vision of shoulder to shoulder with ordinary working people around our nations. The UK is mired in a constitutional swamp People are sick to death of Brexit. And I can fully understand the feelings among many Scottish people that they are best served by striking out away from the Union. But I ask that we remember that the unity and determination of our class is our strength, as that video said. We have never ever been given a hand up or a help out. Certainly no government has ever rushed to the aid of our people as they did with the banking boardrooms. We've had to fight for every right or law change, every single one, together as workers. A UK general election is coming, and when it does, it will be the fight of our lives. There are those who will seek to use that vote to divide us into leavers or remainers, nationalists or unionists. But I reject these labels. I say that each and every one of us in this room just now is united under one banner. First and foremost, we are trade unionists. With this comes responsibility to advance our values of solidarity, of equality, and of justice. And when this election comes, these values are how we should judge the political party offers. I hope that Scottish Labour are able to win back the trust of the Scottish working class. Trust that they took for granted when we were telling the new Labour leadership to wake up and smell the coffee and be more radical. My call, therefore, to Scottish workers is come home to Labour. Lessons have been learned. Colleagues, I've never made a secret of the fact of my support for Jeremy Corbyn, and I've waited all my life for a Labour leader dedicated to transforming our nation into one that mirrors our values and where the government serves the people for the many, not the few. Corbyn is that leader, and the time for change of government has never been more urgent. 1/5 of our country lives on incomes below the poverty line. Just 10% of the country owns 44% of the nation's wealth. Nearly 1 in 3 children live in poverty. Let that sink in. 1 in 3 children in the 5th richest nation on the planet is going hungry. Here in Scotland, as elsewhere in these isles, food bank use is at its record high. Climate change demands concerted and collective action to deliver a just transition and urgency and proactivity. It comes back to that question of trust again. Who do we trust to charter our communities out of these troubling waters, to a better future? Certainly not the man whose privileged upbringing has given him an arrogant entitlement to rule the world and will stop at nothing to keep the keys at number 10. Listening to our delegates today, I'm proud to see a union determined to face the challenges of our ever-changing working and community worlds. The diversity of contributions and the comradely spirit of debate are a delight to witness. Before I headed north, I thought I'd read up on Ayr and this region to understand more about this area's place in Scottish history. I learned that the settlement of the area stretches back centuries with a thriving town recorded in the 13th century, that it has had its fair share of visitors, including Mary, Queen of Scots, and Oliver Cromwell. And of course, Scotland's bard, Burns, was born in the village of Alloway, there you go. It's that Scout. It's the Scouse accent couples with a cold that I've got. The port here saw the region establish itself as a trader in French wines, Irish barley and exotic imports from the new colonies. Ayrshire was a vital trading zone for Scotland, stretching its arms around the known world. Internationalists, that's what we are. Sisters and brothers, it's said that a pessimist sees a difficulty in every opportunity, while an optimist sees an opportunity in every difficulty. Well, to finish where I started, there are many difficulties before us, but I remain optimistic, and I do so because we have our movement. I know that when working people stand together, anything is possible. We'll need to display every ounce of our courage and fight in the weeks and months to come. We're up against the most right-wing government we've ever seen, with coffers packed and overflowing to the rafters, awash with dodgy hedge fund cash, and the majority of the media in their corner, urging them on with jingoistic zeal. But never forget and never lose pride in who we are. We are the working class. Our movement is the authentic voice for millions of people, for their communities of these lands. We are still the greatest force for social change that this country has ever witnessed, and we are ready for the fight. Thank you very much.